The other day, we went live and we just kind of talked about my thoughts on Reg G for the first half an hour of the stream, and I think I might want to do more streams like that where we just kind of go live, talk as a community about our thoughts on a topic. And so I asked in my Discord what sort of topics people wanted to see. And basically, people came out and said they want to know some underrated picks in the Reg G format. And, you know, initially, I replied that I think that's kind of like low-hanging fruit, you know. We've seen a lot of content creators like, anti-meta picks, and they show you like 10 mons that use, and they might give a reason, but like I feel like it's really low-hanging fruit. And so instead of just telling you what 10 underrated picks are for a format that isn't even announced yet, how about I show you guys how to find underrated picks for yourself so you never have to watch one of those videos again. So today what we're going to be doing is going over the process that I use to give all my teams that spice, that perfect anti-meta energy. And hopefully you guys understand it. It's something that's worked for me for open team sheet, closed team sheet for years. So this is exactly how I do it. So yeah, we're gonna be talking a little bit about what I think you should be doing to get the perfect anti-meta mons for any format, for any If we scroll down near the bottom, I was talking about how I don't actually think you should be categorizing Pokemon as overrated or underrated. If you're someone who's intentionally looking to only feature bad Pokemon, that's probably not the right lens to use for competitive play. Just because you're in your mind like blocking out some Pokemon is just bad or some Pokemon is good, and in reality, literally everything could be usable, and you want to keep that option alive in your head as long as possible. You just got to find the right mons for the situations. Now, what I'm saying is don't just add Calyrex Shadow Rider and surround it with 6 Pokemon that are busted, or 6 underrated mons. That's not what you're trying to do here either. You're trying to find the right good underrated mon. You're trying to find something that only that underrated mon can do, and then you add the other Pokemon around it. So it's the exact opposite way. Like, a lot of people will add like the best mons in the game, and then they'll throw in one like anti-meta mon, and that's not how you do it. You actually pick the anti-meta mon first, and you think, what does this anti-meta mon do? And I'll show you guys how we actually get to the phase where you actually have a pool of underrated mons to pick from that suit the role that you want. I'll show you how to do that in just a sec. But then you want to add the mons to complement that mon's playstyle. I'll give an example. I think Intimidate is one of the best abilities in the format right now, and I think that means because Intimidate's so big, I think that special attackers are crazy good in Regulation G. That's just my opinion, right? So what I wanted to do is I wanted to add a team that could use some of the best special attacks in the game in a little bit of a wacky way, a little bit of an off-meta way. If we think of some of the best special attacks in the game right now, there are a lot of AoE moves. There's things like Astral Barrage, Expanding Force, Water Spout, and we also have like Miraidon, with the big Electro Drift, right? So what mons don't use those moves? Let's just take a look at the team that I was building last night. Rayquaza, Galarian Slowking, Murkrow, Chi-Yu, Goldango, Amoonguss. Now, you may think that this is a bit of a weird team. What does this guy do? Well, this guy gets an ability that, like, literally nothing else gets. It gets Curious Medicine. When the Pokemon enters the battle, it scatters medicine from its shell, which removes all stat changes from its allies. So we can pair that with a Goldango, who's using Make It Rain, but we can also pair that with a special attacker Draco Meteor Overheat Rayquaza. And you may think, like, this is so out there. This is so crazy. But how did I get to this point? Well, I picked Slowking, and we're going to show you guys how to get to the process in just a little bit to where you actually pick the anti-meta mon you want to use. And it's going to be a lot easier to do that than you think, because it's not like this is just my God-given talent to use Slowking. I picked Slowking, and I thought, okay, what can Curious Medicine really do for me? I obviously went right to Goldango, and then I went to Goldango to Murkrow. I went from Murkrow, Goldango to Chi-Yu, and then I needed 2 more mons. I needed a restricted. I looked at all the restricteds. I looked at ones that could provide synergy support to a team that utilized those 4 Pokemon. That's where I ended up on Rayquaza, right? And Rayquaza has a really, really high base special attack, 150 base special attack, same as its attack stat. Draco Meteor Overheat, those lower your stats. Imagine going for, like, turn 1, like, Draco, like, Tailwind, or Draco, like, Rage Powder, pivot in the Slowking, do it again, they're down 2 mons, you win the game. So it's a little bit more, it's a little bit out there, right? But it's gonna work. We're gonna play some games with it a little bit later today. I'm gonna show you guys how you can actually come up with these strategies yourself. So the next thing I'm gonna do here is go into, I'm gonna go into Showdown. And we're just gonna talk about some stuff. How about that? How about we talk about some stuff on Showdown? Right? And you guys can create the same thought process for yourself. All right, so here's Showdown, right? So this is what I would recommend that you do. I would recommend if you're someone that wants to use anti-meta Pokemon. Thank you for the sub, by the way. Thank you. New format, same Goldango Murkra. Hey, dude, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? If you're someone that wants to use anti-meta or underutilized Pokemon in creative ways, the first thing you want to do is go onto Showdown, right? And you want to make a box. It's this button right here. I made one right here. This is a box that I actually made for Reg F. I made this right before Orlando Regionals. And what you want to put in that box are Pokemon. They could be meta, they could be anti-meta. Right now, remember, we are more so looking for the off-meta picks. But you want to put Pokemon that they are the only ones that can do what they do. Right? So Bolt is obviously very popular, but there's nothing else that does what Bolt really does. But there's Urshifu. There's something really that does what Urshifu does. So you want to make a box full of Pokemon that they are the only mons that do what they do. And we're not really looking at restricteds right now. We're just looking at like support Pokemon or, you know, other Pokemon that are not the restricted role. So let's just add some mons for Reg G and kind of come up with like mons that they're the only ones that do what they do. We're going to add Ugler and Slowking. Right? Galar, let's just type in Slowking. Right? This thing gets that Curious Medicine. It's different from the regular one. Like, they're very different. This one also gets Eerie Spell. Like, you want to start actively searching for things that are unique about these Pokemon. So it has that Curious Medicine like we're talking about. You can also use Own Tempo Generator, great abilities. It gets Eerie Spell, if I can type. This is a really, really good move in a restricted format. A lot of the Pokemon only have like 8 power points. It's just a really, really like usable mon. Slow base speed. It also gets Chilly Reception. Right? So there's so much you could do with this Pokemon if you really wanted to, right? So that guy is in the box, right? It's nothing else can do what this thing does. Let's add another Pokemon. Let's add Pelipper. I think Pelipper is one of like the best Pokemon in the format that's not a legendary right now. Pelipper obviously gets the Drizzle, so it's like a pseudo rain setter. It gets Tailwind. It gets Wide Guard. And it has a really, really good set of moves being like Weather Ball, boosted by the rain, so it's a water attack, and Hurricane. So this is really, really good against all the balance cores they're using like Incineroar and Rillaboom, right? So this is one of the best Pokemon. This also has a really, really good matchup into Trick Room because like what are Trick Room users using to roll you? They're using Calyrex Ice, and so Calyrex Ice has Glacial Lance, and it has High Horsepower, right? So those moves can't hit Pelipper. You can Wide Guard the Lance, and your Flying type and let you avoid High Horsepower. Pelipper is an amazing Pokemon in this format. You ran out of Glacial Lances in a battle yesterday. PP Stalling is so viable. It really is. Yeah, I think Eternatus is a very good Pokemon for that reason. Things like Dusclops are very good for that reason. Let's add some more Pokemon. Let's just add some more. Let's just start adding Pokemon who you might not normally think of adding in these formats, that they're the only ones that can do what they do. Mimikyu's another one. Nothing else in the game has the disguise ability, right? Nothing else in the game has the disguise ability. And you may be thinking like that, so you've been playing so long, you know every one of these Pokemon already. Well, I'm going to show you how you can actually find these Pokemon, right? So we're on just Showdown. You can sort it by base stat, HP, speed. You can click all these buttons and it'll give you a different way to sort it, right? So what you can do is just go HP and start sorting out, oh, Blissey. Blissey has like the highest HP in the game. It gets Serene Grace. It gets all these things. Nothing else can do what Blissey can do. Add it to the list. Let's go to attack. Scroll down. Palafin. There's nothing else that has the 0 to hero ability. I was using Palafin the other day. I think I lost to a Palafin on YouTube the other day. Add it to the list. Do you see where we're going with this? Just sort these things out. Wow. Let's sort it by special attack. A lot of good restricteds like I was talking about at the start of the video, right? Chandelure. Dang. Flash Fire. There are Flash Fires, but there's not like that many Flash Fire Trick Room setters. There's Armourouge, right, that also get like the coverage, like the taunt potential that Chandelure has. Add it to the list, right? People are saying Sinistcha, Comfey. These are all amazing options. Let's add them to the list. Sinistcha, I think Sinistcha is really good right now. Comfey is really, really good. Alcremie is really, really good. And so you're starting to see, so even if you didn't have player experience, you can still find these things. You can still find them for yourself. Let's just add some more Pokemon. What are some things? I think Mineshaw is like really, really good. Gets Fake Out, gets Wide Guard. So I'm not doing a video where I'm explaining to you the exact reasons why every one of these Pokemon are anti-meta, and here's why you use them, and here's the 6 mons that you pair them with, blah, 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 whatever. It's up to you guys to do that. It's up to you guys to then find the mons for your team. Maybe we'll go and talk about it a little bit more in depth. But I do think that like this is a great exercise. Let's get a full box going. Let's talk about some more mons that nothing else can do what they do. Because I think right now, Garg, I used Garg the other day. Let's put Garg in there. let's go a little bit more anti-meta, because these are all things that people are seeing. People are like, I don't need you to tell me that Mineshao's good. I don't need you to tell me Alcremie's good, Sinishaw's good. That's fair, right? Let's start adding some mons that people wouldn't normally think about. I'm going to put Hisui and Zoroark. I think Hisui and Zoroark is a really, really good mon. I've thought this for a really long time. I think there's some really good stuff you can pair it with. I think it goes great with Lugia, great with Lunala, things like that. I think this Pokemon can single-handedly give you wins. I think it's a very, very underrated Pokemon, and it's the thing I usually gravitate to if I need ideas. Let's think about some other ones. Let's think of some Tailwind setters. Fezandipity. Fezandipity could be good, but I feel like that's a little bit too meta. Let's look at some Tailwind setters. So again, now that we've exhausted like some of the obvious ones, let's just start looking for specific roles that we want these things to do. Let's look at Tailwind setters. And then after that, we'll look at Trick Room setters. So what we're going to search by Tailwind on Showdown. And so you're going to see all the restricteds that have Tailwind, and then we're going to see all these other guys that have Tailwind down here. I think Corviknight's very, very good with Stall, with Pressure right now, and Mirror Armor, very, very good abilities. I think Hisui Decidueye is like super cracked on the right teams. I think Hisui Decidueye would have been really, really good in Reg F. I don't know why people didn't use it. Suicune's very good. I use Talonflame at Orlando. That's what people are saying. Braviary is actually viable. A guy lost to Braviary at Orlando next to me. I think that Drifblim is underrated. I've thought Enamorus is underrated for a while. Let's see. We can go deeper. We can go deeper. Let's just keep scrolling down. Jumpluff definitely sees play. Arngulus does see play. We can sort these by base stats. And we can just start scrolling. I think Tailwind Dragonite's good. And so this also gets you to understand the moves that these Pokemon have more. Because like, I think people might be like, yo, I didn't even know Enamorus got Tailwind. Now you know. You know from doing this exercise. I think Zapdos is a good mon. I think Noivern's really good on closed team sheet. Mandibuzz is a really, really good mon in this format. I think it's very, very bulky. It goes very, very good on Seeds teams. I'm going to put Mandibuzz here. And so like Mandibuzz with like an Electric Seed next to like a Miraidon with like Overcoat, this is really, really good into like Balance Amoonguss in Cinderella. Flygon does get Tailwind, now you know, right? So I think like this is like a really good example of like finding a mon that is like the diamond in the rough, that like it does just enough of everything. It has the Snarls, it has the Tailwind, it has the Taunt, it has the Foul Play, right? It has like, so this mon is something that has dedicated roles. It can pivot in, block Spores from Amoonguss, get Seeds Boost if it needs it, Tailwind, it gets like Roost and things like that. So this is like a really, really good mon, right? Comfey also gets Tailwind, yeah. So it's like you're forcing yourself to learn by finding the exact things that you need and being able to look at everything as a whole. Let's look at some Trick Room setters that are relatively underrated, just to help the other people who are some Trick Room players out. Because like everyone knows the good Trick Room setters, right? Everyone knows the good ones up here. You got the good Trick Room setters up here. You got the Bronzongs. I think Bronzong is like I think Bronzong will be super meta by the end of the format, but this is probably my favorite Trick Room setter in the format. Let's take a look. I think Alolan Executor is a very, very underrated Trick Room setter because it's one of, I think, only a couple Pokemon that have like that Grass Dragon typing, or like that unique of a typing. I think Frisk and Harvest are both very good abilities, but we can go deeper. We can go deeper. Find Klefki is a very unique Trick Room setter because it didn't used to get Trick Room, and I think a lot of people don't know that. And it is Prankster boosted Trick Room, doesn't really help. Espeon's too aggressive. I think Malamar's a pretty good Trick Room setter. There's that Mimikyu we were talking about. Oranguru pretty standard. Porygon's pretty standard. Rabska, Sinistcha, we're already seeing these. Slowking would have been a Trick Room setter that would be unique. I think Uxie is a very underrated Trick Room setter in this format. And you may be thinking like, Uxie, that's like really, really out there, right? Really, really out there. But Uxie gets a lot of like really cool things. 130 on each respective base defense and 75 base HP is very, very strong, so it gets that Trick Room. But what Uxie gets that sets it apart from other Trick Room setters, let's just go into a new box over here. So we're going to put in Trick Room. So we're going to put in Trick Room, and we're going to put in Yawn, right? There's not that many Pokemon that get that combo. Yes, the Slowbro line does, but Uxie gets something that a lot of them don't. And we're going to sort these by base stat here. So Uxie has 580, it has 100 more base stats than something like a Slowbro does. And so Uxie gets Trick Room, it gets Yawn. It also gets like Ally Switch, Baton Pass, Encore, U-Turn, Taunt. I think it gets Taunt, right? Does it get Taunt? Doesn't get Taunt. I thought it got Taunt, but yeah, it gets the U-Turn, right? So you can go for like, you can start cycling you can Yawn cycle with Trick Room here. And you can do the same thing with Oranguru, but Oranguru doesn't have the bulk, the defensive typing. You can go with you can go any sort of defensive type you want in the Uxie, and you get like a ton of value. It's not as popular as it should be. I realize how crazy of a sentence that is. Yeah, I mean, Toadschool gets Trick Room as well. Yeah, I think Toadschool's a really good one as well. But Uxie gets just a lot of unique moves. It also has that one unique move, Mystical Power, that gives a 100% boost to its special attack every time it uses it. So it's like this thing does something that literally no other mons do, right? And you're able to find that by going through this little exercise. It's then up to you as a player to build the right team around these Pokemon. Let's take a look at a couple teams that I've built recently and kind of show my work so you guys can see how, I've built them. This is our box we're using. So we just listed like some Pokemon that like you couldn't use. This box is a really good example, I think, of Pokemon that do things that no other mons can't. Like Glamour is very nice. We got Iron Leaves, Iron Boulder, Sandy Shocks. I think Sandy Shocks is another mon that is really, really good in Reg G that nothing else can do what Sandy Shocks does. Let's take this Groudon team that I used the other day. This Groudon team is one that I used the other day. I think I went 8-1 with it on ladder, but it would work in open sheet as well. So I wanted to use Groudon. And so I thought to myself, how would I utilize Groudon, right? So what I did was I went to my boxes and I just added like all of the photosynthesis mons, and then I added like all of the chlorophyll mons, and then I really just saw the like Sandy Shocks, and I went and looked at it a little bit more, and Sandy Shocks gets Gravity, which helps Groudon. It gets Electro Web, which it didn't used to get until the DLC. And so now you can actually weave in a little bit of like synergy with like Gravity to enable your P-Blades, E-Webs to make Groudon a little bit faster, have a little bit of a bulky Groudon. Obviously, Flutter Mane's really, really cool. We're using a Scarf Flutter Mane. So actually, when we get the Photosynthesis boost, we have double speed. Entity was just there to be bait, and if we come in, basically like if we're going against Ogre, we have Groudon, we pivot in the Entity, we get Terrain, eject button out or dies, go right back into the Groudon for a repin with Terrain, so it's really, really solid. We had an Articuno with Hypnosis with Goggles to pair with the Sandy Shocks, and just the standard jump up set. So this team looks like relatively standard on paper, but you can see like nothing else really does what that Articuno does, and the Articuno plays very well with the Groudon because it keeps the Amoonguss and the Incineroar and the Rillaboom away from our Groudon. So this is actually like a really, really like well-made team, in my opinion, that does a lot of things right, and it ended up going like 8-1 on ladder. I think that's pretty good, So I think this is a really, really cool team, and it features, it's just a good example. Like I wanted Pokemon that could support the Groudon, and I think Sandy Shocks was the perfect Pokemon for that situation. Let's take a look at a couple other teams. Let's read some comments too. I feel like everyone just forgot that Iron Boulder is a 100% accurate rock move that hits through Protect. Yeah, Iron Boulder is like super cracked. Yeah, they gave Shocks webs, yeah. So let's take a look at another one. This is my Orlando Regionals team, right? So my Orlando Regionals team was a very standard like Glimdozo, but I think this is a Reg F team, but I'll use it as an example. I wanted to use Glimdozo. I just felt it was really good in the meta. I felt people were leaning a little bit more towards balance, and so what I needed to do was build a really, really standard core and then add a couple off-meta picks. What I think a lot of people would do is they would have changed that Zoroark for a Flutter and the Talonflame for a Torn. Now this is the last little bit of spice that you can do to make your teams off-meta. This is the secret sauce that you've been waiting this whole time for. One thing that you can do to make your teams really pop is pick a role for the Mon. Like I said, this is supposed to be a special attacking Flutter. This is supposed to be a Tailwind setter. And slightly change that Pokemon to something that does the same job in a little bit different way. This will do two things. This will give you a little bit of a different way to do it, but also your opponent won't understand the matchup that that Pokemon brings to the table. They won't know the calcs for that Pokemon. They might not know the speed tiers for that Pokemon. So it will give you the advantage. Even if you don't think it will, it will. So, because like what does a Spec Zoroark do that a Flutter Mane doesn't? Not that much, right? They're basically like, I'm going to come in and do the big damage once. It's just they don't always know it's coming with a Zoroark. What does Talonflame do that Tornadus doesn't? Well, I'll tell you, it's faster for one, so you're actually able to function at like a better speed tier. You're able to get your Tailwinds boosted by Gale Wings off before Whimsicott could taunt you. It's really, really nice. Or other Tornaduses could taunt you. And unlike Tornadus, which has to enable its teammates with Tailwind and Rain Dances, Talonflame can just KO stuff with Brave Bird. So if I see you lead like a booster Flutter, I can just go Flying Terra and pop your Flutter on the first turn. That's really, really nice. The last little trick here for this team was my banded Urshifu that was like almost full bulk. Really, really cool team. I ended up going 6-3 this tournament. Should have been 7-2, but it's like it's a really, really good team that does things in like an off-meta, anti-meta way that features mons that I like, that I was able to get to these positions by finding roles that I wanted to be hit. Like I said, Tailwind Setter, AoE Special Attacker, and slightly tweaking the roles. Again, going through that same exercise where you're on Showdown and you're just typing like you just basically sort things by like special attacker, right? Sort things by like what gets tailwind, sort things, you know, it's the same exercise as we used up here, right? So 6-3 is points. Yep. Oh, and we had upper hand on Talonflame. It's really nice. I really like I got that question a lot. Why did I use upper hand over quick guard? And the answer is people are less familiar. For example, if I have quick guard, right? You're just going to throw the fake out. You're going to be like, fuck it. Quick guard me, bro. You can't tailwind and quick guard at the same time. I'm doing it. But if I have upper hand and you have to take like 40% of your health when you want to try and use that fake out, you're a little bit more hesitant to use it, which means you just don't use it, which means I can do what I want, right? So it's better. There's more of a cost. It's like using Spiky Shield versus using Protect, right? You know, that's my idea, and it works. And also in those late game situations against like bolts, it's great. It's also just like one shots Gambit, one shot Shempow. Like it's kind of nice. It's kind of nice. Let's take a look at this Palkia team that I built relatively recently. Let's take a look at this one, because this is the one that I used on YouTube this morning. So it features Palkia, which is a relatively underrated restricted. If you want a video going over like underrated restricteds, we can do that too. But remember, we're not trying to find things that are underrated. We're trying to find things that this Pokemon does something no other one can. Right? That's the whole point. I want you guys to break that mindset that like you have to use anti-meta. It has to be low usage to be like, that's not the point. Like every single Pokemon's viable. You just got to get like, you got to get that out of your system. One Pokemon that is relatively underrated in this format though is Thundurus. I think Thundurus is really, really good. We're using a full bulk Thundurus here with like Snarl, Discharge paired next to like Telepathy, Palkia, Lando. So like, what did I do? What did I want to do with this team? I have Palkia here, but what was the actual goal in building this team? The goal in building this team was I wanted a restricted that could play the game without losing on the first turn. So I set that as the goal for my team building here. I wanted to not lose on the first turn. I know like everyone wants to use like Spatial Rend to like Dragon Shear crit Palkia. That's not the point. I wanted a safe restricted. That's why I picked Palkia. Water Dragon type, I'm very good. If I have a Steel Terra or like a Poison or Fire Terra, I have no real weakness. I'm not going to die on the first turn, right? So when I had Palkia, I looked at what it got. It got like pressure, so I can go into like that pseudo pressure stall, or I could go into like telepathy. And so I decided to go into the telepathy variant with like Earthquake, Lando, Discharge, Thundy. And so I thought to myself, like if I have Palkia and I'm adding an Intimidator, that's going to help me versus physical attackers. And if I have Palkia and I'm adding a special attack lowerer, like I have a vested Thundy that has Snarl, I have like a good matchup, a safe matchup into relatively everything. I also have Discharge Paras, I have Weather Balls, and again we have that Pelipper here, that underrated pick that also at the same time enables Palkia. I was able to find this Pelipper by going through that same exercise of looking at Pokemon that they're the only ones that know what they can do. Like I wanted a Wide Guard user, that's how I found Pelipper. I looked at all the Wide Guard users, and Pelipper was the one that fit the team the best. And then I used a variant of this team that had Clefairy and Incineroar on them, which are relatively standard picks, but I didn't like it. I felt like it was too reactive, and so I changed it to Frigoraph just to say, hey, I'm done getting fake out cycled, and I added Garg to say like, hey, I'm done losing to balance, right? So every single time you add something, there has to be like a dedicated thing you're trying to do, and you're kind of just throwing and seeing what sticks. You're like, I'm adding this mon. If it works in this matchup, but the thing I added it for, we're going to keep it. If it doesn't work, we're going to replace it. We're going to tweak it, try and fine tune, and see exactly what we need to add in the future. And I like this team a lot. I ended up going 3-1 in one of the online tours, and I just had a good time with it. It was a good team. So I'll open up questions, answers. You know, like, do you have any questions? Do you think I went in depth enough in helping you guys understand how I find underrated picks? I really just think, oh my gosh, Showdown. I really just think it comes down to sorting Pokemon and understanding that, like, you want to find the good niche Pokemon that can do anything. And I shouldn't just like say only good mons matter. Like when I say that you can use like almost anything, you can use like anything but like Metapod. I feel like finding a good Wide Guard user is a good idea for the format. I agree, yeah. So if you were to just search like Wide Guard, right, and then I would say sort it by base stat first. These are going to be your higher ones here. So like these mons are all like really good. Like Probopass is an underrated Wide Guard user. Torterra is an underrated Wide Guard user. Yeah, let me know if you think I did this right. I think that this is like a discussion that should be had for everyone that wants to like learn more about competitive Pokemon. There are so many mons that can do so many little different things that you're not even thinking.